Have you ever had a guest who accidentally introduced you to a whole new side of your own city? That happened to me in my Hell's Kitchen apartment on West 47th Street. Now, that flat is a one-bedroom walk-up, nothing particularly fancy, tiny kitchen, narrow balcony, exposed heating pipes that groan in winter. But it's a stone's throw from the theater district, which makes it prime real estate for tourists chasing Broadway shows. The guest was a young guy named Matteo from Italy. He messaged me before check-in. I come for pizza, jazz, and dreams. I laughed out loud when I read it. Usually, guests send me a list of complaints or special requests. Matteo just sounded like he'd walked out of a movie. When I met him at check-in, he really leaned into that vibe. Leather jacket, camera slung around his neck, big grin plastered on his face. He shook my hand like we were old friends, and immediately he asked, "Where is the real New York?" I gave him the usual recommendations. Times Square if he wanted lights, Joe's Pizza if he wanted a slice, maybe a speakeasy or two. He listened politely, then shook his head and said, No, I don't want tourist New York. I want your New York. That threw me off. Hosting is a business, right? I'm not a tour guide. Still, something about Matteo's enthusiasm made me pause. So I rattled off a few places I personally loved, a dive bar tucked under the Port Authority, a jazz club I hadn't been to in years, the bakery where I buy bagels on Sundays. I figured he might try one or two. The next night, around midnight, I got a text from him. "Your jazz club is perfect. The trumpet made me cry. You must come with me tomorrow." Normally, I keep a healthy boundary between my guests and my own life, but the way he wrote it, an invitation from someone who genuinely wanted to share, it hooked me. So the following night, I found myself sitting across from my guest in a cramped little jazz club I hadn't set foot in since my 20s. The place was alive, smoky air, bass thumping, a trumpet solo that rattled the tables. Matteo looked like he was in heaven. He kept saying, "This is New York, this." By the end of the night, the bartender was pouring us shots on the house, and Matteo was chatting up strangers at the bar like he'd known them forever. Over the next 2 days, he somehow pulled me into his version of my own city. We hit the bakery at dawn, coffee and bagels in hand, watching the neighborhood wake up. He dragged me through a gallery I'd never noticed just 2 blocks from the flat, and when we walked past a Broadway theater, instead of going inside, he made me stand outside with him just to listen to the muffled music leaking through the doors. Even here, he said, it is magic. By the time Matteo checked out, the apartment was spotless. Bed made military tight, dishes washed, a thank you note on the counter. But under the note, he'd left a small sketch. Me and him at the jazz club, little details scribbled in, the trumpet player, the bartender, even the candle on the table. At the bottom, he wrote, "Your New York is beautiful. Thank you for sharing it." I stood there holding the sketch, realizing something that almost embarrassed me. I'd lived in this city for years, but it took a guest, someone who'd never been here before, to remind me how much magic was still hiding in plain sight. So, have I ever had a guest who accidentally introduced me to a whole new side of my own city? Yeah. His name was Matteo, and I'm not sure who left that flat more changed, him or me.